Lauren pulled into the long gravel driveway, her tires crunching softly as she approached the house she'd grown up in. It had been months since her last visit, and longer still since she'd stayed the night. The trees surrounding the property swayed gently in the fall breeze, golden leaves scattered like memories across the yard. Her father, Richard, had called her earlier in the week, asking if she'd come by to help prepare for a small get-together, just a few of his oldest friends. Stopping by for drinks and dinner, she agreed without much thought. Honestly, she needed the break. Her apartment in Pittsburgh felt more like a box these days, filled with silence, unwashed coffee mugs, and a growing sense of emotional fog. Work wasn't fulfilling anymore. Her long-term relationship with Matt had recently ended with a tired conversation and no real anger, just the slow realization that they'd outgrown each other. As she stepped out of the car and grabbed her overnight bag, she told herself she was here to help, to be a good daughter, and nothing more. But deep down, she hoped the change of scenery might clear her mind, or at least help her feel something again. Richard greeted her at the door with a warm hug. He looked tired but cheerful. "You made good time," he said, stepping aside to let her in. "The guys will be here soon." The guys were his 3 longtime friends, Mark, David, and James. They had been around since Lauren was little. She remembered their voices from cookouts and birthdays, their laughter filling the backyard during summer evenings. They were part of her past, but she hadn't seen them in years, not since Mom's funeral, maybe even longer. Inside, the house looked almost the same. Framed family photos lined the hallway. A scent of fresh coffee mixed with something baking in the oven. Lauren placed her bag upstairs and changed into something casual. Jeans, a soft sweater, just enough makeup to not look tired. She caught her reflection in the mirror and sighed. 31, single, and still unsure of what came next. Downstairs, the front door opened just as she reached the kitchen. David entered first, carrying a bottle of wine and flashing a wide smile. He had always been the loud one, charming and full of stories. Mark came next, taller than she remembered, wearing a dark jacket and offering a warm but quiet nod. Then James, with his calm demeanor and soft eyes, brought up the rear. He handed her a pie and said, "For dessert, your dad said you still love apple." She smiled, surprised he remembered. The men settled into the living room, chatting easily with Richard. Lauren poured drinks and helped set the snacks out, weaving in and out of the conversations. At first, it felt like nothing had changed. The men told stories, joked about old times, and occasionally asked her about work and life in the city. But as the afternoon passed, something began to feel different. It was subtle. A glance held a second longer. A compliment that felt a bit too personal. Mark especially seemed to watch her closely. When she laughed at one of James the next morning, the air was still damp from the storm that passed overnight. Lauren stood by the kitchen window, watching the fog lift from the trees surrounding her father's home. Her coffee had gone cold, but she hadn't noticed. Her thoughts were still with what happened the night before, how Mark had looked at her, how something unspoken passed between them. She wasn't imagining it. That glance, the way his voice softened when he asked about her dreams, how he seemed to remember things she'd said years ago. It unsettled her in ways she didn't want to admit. But there was also warmth, attention, someone seeing her as more than just Richard's daughter. The house was quiet when she stepped into the hallway. Her father had gone into town for errands. Mark, David, and James were still around, helping Richard with things around the property while enjoying a quiet weekend together. It was supposed to be harmless, a simple visit. But the air felt different now, more aware, more alive. Dachi found David out by the shed, helping fix a leaky roof tile. He smiled when he saw her. "You disappeared last night," he said kindly. "Just tired," Lauren replied, brushing her hair behind her ear. "The rain makes me sleepy." "Yeah, it brings back memories," he said. "This place used to be full of life. You running through the halls with paint on your hands, your dad chasing you down with a towel." Lauren laughed lightly. "Feels like a lifetime ago." David looked at her for a second too long. You've grown into someone remarkable, Lauren. Don't forget that. She blinked. It was unexpected. Gentle. Nothing wrong with the words. But something stirred inside her again, that same uneasy feeling of being seen too clearly. She smiled politely and excused herself, heading toward the garden where James was trimming back vines. He greeted her with a quiet nod. Always the quiet one. James rarely said much. But when he did, his words carried weight. "You okay?" he asked, barely looking up. Lauren nodded, clearing my head. "You seem distracted." She hesitated, then replied honestly, "I guess I've been thinking a lot lately about life, where it's going." James nodded again. "Makes sense. Sometimes the places we leave bring back things we thought we'd buried." She looked at him. His words felt deeper than small talk. But before she could ask more, Mark appeared, wiping his hands with a rag. "There you are," he said to Lauren. "I was about to make lunch. Thought you might want to help." She followed him inside. The kitchen was warm with sunlight, and Mark moved easily around it like he'd done it 100 times, as they chopped vegetables and shared small stories. The tension between them grew quieter but more noticeable. Mark passed her a tomato and paused. "You ever think about moving back here?" She shook her head. "Too many memories. Besides, my life's in the city now." "Is it a life you chose, or one that just happened to you?" he asked, gently but seriously. The question lingered. No one had ever asked her that before. "I'm not sure anymore," she admitted. He looked at her for a moment, not judging, just present. "You deserve to feel alive, not stuck." Her chest tightened. She had spent so long going through the motions, work, relationship, family visits, always keeping her real self tucked away. Lunch passed quietly. Richard returned, and the men sat around the table sharing old stories. Lauren watched them, her father laughing, his friends relaxed. She was grateful for their bond, but she couldn't stop thinking about how different things felt now. That evening, as the sun went down and the house grew dim, the group moved into the den. A fire burned low in the fireplace. They sat with wine and blankets, the mood slower, softer. Mark sat beside Lauren, close but not touching. David played soft music on the old record player, and James stared into the flames. It felt like a memory. Being creative one she knew she'd remember long after they all went home. She turned to Mark. "Do you believe in second chances?" He looked at her carefully. "I do. Think sometimes we meet people at the wrong time. Think sometimes the right time doesn't look the way we thought it would." She looked down at her hands. "I've been in a relationship for 3 years, but it's not working. I don't even think he sees me anymore." Mark said nothing at first. Then, "I see you." Her heart skipped. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't a game. It was a man, older, wiser, telling her a truth she hadn't heard in so long. She didn't know how to respond. She felt pulled toward comfort, toward clarity, toward him. But she also felt the weight of it all. Her father upstairs, the years between them, the rules they weren't supposed to break. She excused herself and went to the kitchen. Her chest was tight with emotion. She stared at the sink, unsure whether to cry or scream. Then Mark came in, quiet, careful. "I didn't mean to cross a line," he said, "but I won't pretend I don't feel something." She turned to him, eyes full. "I don't know what I'm doing. I just know that for the first time in a long time, someone sees me, and it scares me." He didn't move closer. He didn't reach for her. He just nodded. "You don't have to figure it all out tonight." She felt a tear fall and wiped it quickly. "Thank you." He gave a soft smile, one filled with understanding. "Get some rest." As he walked away, Lauren stood there, trembling. This wasn't a game. This wasn't some fantasy. It was real. It was emotional. And it was dangerous in the quietest, most human way. She went to bed that night staring at the ceiling, her thoughts spinning. She had done nothing wrong, not yet, but something had shifted. And she knew, no matter what came next, nothing would ever be the same again. Lauren woke up to the soft light of morning filtering through the curtains. her mind still tangled in the emotions from the night before. She sat on the edge of the bed, breathing slowly, trying to steady the mix of hope and guilt that filled her chest. The feelings she had shared with Mark were confusing, but they were also undeniable. She knew that this connection wasn't just a fleeting thought, it was real and it was strong. Downstairs, the house was coming alive with the sounds of Richard and his friends moving about. Lauren prepared herself for the day, each movement deliberate as she tried to keep her swirling thoughts at bay. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew that the unspoken tension between her and Mark was still there, pulsing just beneath the surface. After breakfast, Richard and the three friends gathered around the living room, sharing laughter and stories like they always did. But Lauren noticed how Mark's gaze found her from time to time, and how those fleeting looks carried a depth she hadn't seen before. The atmosphere was heavier than usual, charged with something unsaid. Lauren excused herself and wandered into the garden to clear her head. The crisp air and rustling leaves offered a moment of calm, but her thoughts quickly returned to the growing bond with Mark. She remembered the way his eyes softened when he spoke about her dreams, the kindness in his voice that made her feel seen after so long of being invisible as she stood there. James approached quietly. He was a man of few words, but his presence was steady and reassuring. "You okay?" he asked gently. Lauren nodded, though she knew she wasn't entirely honest. "I'm just trying to make sense of everything." James smiled slightly. "Sometimes the hardest things to face are the ones we try to hide from ourselves." His words resonated, but before she could respond, Mark appeared, his expression thoughtful as he joined them in the garden. He looked at Lauren with a tenderness that caught her off guard. "Would you like to take a walk?" he asked. She hesitated, then agreed. They walked slowly through the winding paths, the trees casting long shadows in the late afternoon sun. The conversation between them was soft and honest, a rare moment of vulnerability shared between two people who both knew the complications ahead. Mark spoke first. "Lauren, I don't want to hurt your father or damage what we all have here, but I can't ignore how I feel." Lauren looked down, conflicted. "I feel it too, but it's wrong. You're my father's friend. This could ruin everything." Mark took her hand gently. "Sometimes the heart doesn't listen to what's right or wrong. It just feels." She felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them away. "I've spent so long trying to be what everyone expects. But what if I want more? What if I want to be truly seen?" He squeezed her hand, giving silent encouragement. For a moment time seemed to stand still as they both sat with the weight of their emotions. Suddenly, David's voice called from the house, breaking the spell. "Dinner's ready." They released each other and returned indoors. The room was warm, but Lauren felt colder inside. She knew they couldn't keep Lauren woke early the next morning, the cold light slipping through the curtains feeling sharper than usual. Last night's thoughts still clung to her mind, the tension, the feelings she and Mark couldn't ignore anymore. Her heart felt heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. She moved quietly down the stairs, careful not to wake anyone else in the house. Mark was already in the den, sitting by the fire with a sketchbook on his lap. The soft scratch of his pencil filled the room. When he noticed her, he offered a small, tired smile. "Morning," he said softly. Lauren nodded, taking a seat across from him. The room was calm, but charged with all the things they weren't yet ready to say aloud. She sipped her tea, feeling the warmth spread through her, hoping it would ease the ache inside. Mark put down his pencil and looked directly at her. "We need to talk," he said, his voice steady but serious. Lauren met his gaze. "I know." The words felt like a small relief, finally admitting the truth between them. He took a deep breath. "This isn't just a passing feeling. I care about you, Lauren. But I also respect your father, and I don't want to cause him pain." She nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes. "Neither do the first, but pretending it's not real isn't fair to any of us." The room fell silent, heavy with emotion. Lauren reached out, hesitating before gently touching his hand. It was a simple gesture, but it carried everything they couldn't say in words. "What do we do now?" she whispered. Mark looked down, thoughtful. "We need honesty." With your father? With ourselves? Secrets only hurt people more. Lauren knew he was right. The path ahead was uncertain and scary, but the only way forward was to face it together. Openly later that day, Lauren found her father alone in his study. His expression softened when he saw her enter. She took a deep breath and began to speak the truth she had held inside for so long. She told him about her feelings, about Mark's kindness, and the connection that had grown unexpectedly between them. Richard listened quietly, the lines on his face deepening with concern and hurt. When she finished, he looked up, eyes searching hers. "Lauren, I love you. You are my daughter. But this is difficult." He paused. "I need time to understand." Lauren nodded, grateful for his honesty. "I'm sorry if I've hurt you. That was never my intention." Richard reached out, taking her hand gently. "Thank you for telling me. That means more than you know." In the days that followed, the four adults shared a fragile peace. Mark respected Richard's need for space, and Lauren focused on rebuilding trust with her father. The feelings between her and Mark didn't disappear, they simply transformed into something quieter, something honest. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lauren stood on the porch watching the fading light. She thought about the unexpected journey she had been on, the heartbreak, the longing, the courage to speak her truth. It wasn't the story she had imagined for herself, but it was real, and it was hers. Mark joined her quietly, standing beside her without words. They watched the sky together, connected not just by feelings but by respect, honesty, and the hope for healing. Lauren smiled softly, knowing that life was full of unexpected moments. Sometimes those moments bring pain. Sometimes they bring love. And sometimes they bring the chance to start again with courage and truth lighting the way.